Right? So that is one, especially for rice, government is doing that. Government is doing that for rice. But sometimes we have seen for many other products also farmers face this problem. Right? Recently I saw this pumpkin. I think you may have seen in news. Pumpkin. So they are telling now what has happened. They have some very good harvest these days, but they cannot sell the product. Right? Why? The price is very low. Right? In that case, actually, certain products, right? So this problem is there because there is no proper action or proper technology in our country to encourage these producers. Because many this happened for many these agricultural items, vegetables and fruits. Sometimes I have seen this tomato production is very high. What happened to the price? Price decreased to very low level. And recently,
milk also,
yeah,
fresh milk.
sorry, fresh milk. Yes. Yeah, so that recently we saw there are a number of issues, and ultimately these producers, they have to throw fresh milk. Right? I saw that they are even having bath from fresh milk. Right?
Fresh
so
milk.
in order to show the dissatisfaction with the government for not taking any action. Right? Fresh milk and tomato, pumpkin. So right, so number of things. But I have seen so some other countries, they do this dried vegetables to then our people purchase from other countries, right? So one of my friends who went to training in Malaysia or Indonesia, so he has purchased dry mango, right, and a lot of other fruits, pineapple, right? So our people can do that, right? So enough the production is there, but the government is not helping, right, these people, right? So some of these issues are there. So one thing, certain products government can purchase. So that is one solution. Government can purchase the surplus, right? Government purchase the surplus, purchase the surplus, right? So that is one alternative. If the government is going to purchase the surplus, now when right, the reason to decrease the price, right, is what? What is the reason? The surplus. In order to overcome surplus, what are the options? So, due to this option, what happened? Right? So now, in order to overcome surplus, if the government is buying the surplus, what will happen? Demand change or supply chain? Demand change or supply chain? Right? So if this alternative is used, what will happen in the market? Demand change or supply chain?
Demand change.
The government, yeah?
Demand
change, right? Because this is the demand from the consumers, the balance is purchased by the government. So then what will happen? Demand will increase. When the demand increase, then what will happen? The minimum price can be used in the market because there is no surplus. Government is buying the surplus, so demand increase. So that is one good alternative. What else? What are the other options?
You can export the excess.
Export, exactly. So that, right? So the government should help, and the producers should try to export the surplus. Right? Exporting the surplus is another good option. Right? Exporting the surplus. Exporting the surplus. When the government is exporting the surplus, then what will happen to this demand and supply? Right? Government or the helping the producers to export the surplus. What will happen? Demand change or supply change?
Demand change. Demand change.
Then also exactly the same result. Why? This is the demand from the local consumers, and as you very clearly demand what will have increase, right? If exporting means there should be demand from other countries, right? So demand increase. This is the demand from the consumers and other countries demand, right? So then the demand increase, and the government will be able to implement the minimum price, right? Any other option?
Import tax, if any, same product importing.
Oh, yeah, so that's another thing. So imports of the same product can be discouraged, right? Imports of the same product or the related alternatives should be discouraged, right? That is another regulatory action, right? Importing of the same product or related, right? Or alternatives. Can be limited, can be restricted. right? So that is another good option to for the benefit of local producers. What else? What else?
Using the surplus amount as a byproduct to make any substitutes.
That's another good good option, because even I think a few years back, so there was information that the rice production of Sri Lanka is more than the level required for the local consumption,
Yeah.
right? So then then there was actually some ministers, they said these farmers should stop producing this. So that's a option given by some ministers. But one good method is so what you suggested, right? So this surplus should be used to produce substitutes, right? Other substitute alternative products, right? I saw that a certain party is trying to produce bread using rice flour, but I don't know. It was not very much successful. But even some biscuits they try to produce using rice flour, right? Using the surplus to produce other substitute goods, to related goods, alternatives, right? Using the surplus to produce substitutes or other products, right? Produce other goods. So that is another good option. That is another good option. And some countries use another, right? Maybe very incorrect option. Some countries, because what is the reason to decrease the price? The reason to decrease the price is surplus, right? So in order to overcome this, some countries use another method. What is that? Especially countries like America. Sometimes when their wheat flour production is is very high, because they know in the world market, so there is a possibility to decrease the price. Then what they do?
They throw it away.
They throw it away, destroy the surplus. That also some countries practice, right? So which is not acceptable, but some countries do that. They destroy the surplus to, right? So without even giving to some poor country, right?
So
So
some
what
of
they
them are
do?
making animal foods as well.
Yeah. Yes. Right. So so this type of actions also taken by some countries, right? But this may be these are maybe the proper, right, better alternatives to overcome this surplus and to maintain the minimum price at the initially planned level, right? So if when these actions are taken, then the government will be able to help to maintain the minimum price at the initially agreed level, so that the producers will get the expected price from the product, right? This problem can be eliminated. Okay, so that is uh, the possible result of the minimum price controls, right? Then the next the government intervention method, so we can say indirect taxes, right? Indirect taxes you already know, right? So indirect taxes mean these are the taxes imposed on goods and services, right? These are the taxes imposed on goods and services. Then and what are the reasons to impose indirect taxes, right? What are the main reasons to impose indirect taxes? I think briefly we have discussed earlier. What are the main reasons to impose indirect taxes, right? What are the main reasons to impose indirect taxes?
Again, government revenue.
Yeah, so we know mainly in most of the developing countries, the government is using the indirect taxes for revenue purpose. But actually, I think briefly we discussed earlier, even though that is the main revenue source of government, using indirect taxes to get a major percentage of tax revenue is not the best method, right? So when you see the tax revenue the composition of the tax revenue in developed countries and developing countries, one main difference that we can see in developed countries, higher percentage of tax revenue represented by direct taxes or indirect taxes. In developed countries, higher
Direct
percentage
taxes.
Direct taxes.
Direct taxes.
right? Direct taxes. Taxes anyway that has burden to the payer, but direct taxes maybe in more in line with the tax principles, because there are, right, actually when these taxes were introduced long time back, some very senior economists and even especially father of economics, right? So who is known as the father of economics? Father of economics, right? Who is known as father of economics?
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith, right? So according to him, there are several principles of taxation. So he said taxes should be imposed in line with number of principles. What is the first principle he mentioned? Equity, right? Sadharana, right? Equity. That means he said taxes should be imposed only on the people, those who are able to pay the tax, right? So that should be based on the ability to pay tax, right? And he said higher taxes should be imposed on people who has the higher capacity, lower taxes should be imposed on people those who have the lower capacity, low purchasing power, right? But when we compare these two taxes, direct taxes and indirect taxes, so one tax is not in line with that equity principle. What is that? Indirect tax is not in line with equity principle. Why? That is not very fair, because indirect taxes mean when the tax is added to the price of the product, whatever the level of income, the consumer has to pay the same tax. The very rich people and very poor people, they have to pay the same tax, which is not fair, because when the tax is included in the price of the product, when the consumer is buying the product, so the same tax has to be paid by different consumers with different purchasing powers, which is not fair. So that's why indirect taxes are considered as unfair for the the payer. That's why in developed countries, as you mentioned, the major percentage of tax income represented by direct taxes, right? But in developing countries, right, one significant feature in the tax revenue of the government, very high percentage of the tax revenue is generated from indirect taxes. In Sri Lanka, if you see the government tax revenue, more than 80% is generated from indirect taxes, right? So when we move to, yeah.
So what about that socialist countries like Cuba? They have also same higher percentage of indirect taxes.
They actually there are indirect taxes in some countries. Actually, they impose less indirect taxes, and because the government is trying to, but nowadays so the trend is as we discuss under these economic systems, most of the countries now even the countries like socialist country which are known as socialist countries earlier, but now they also have a lot of capitalist features, but still they have more socialist features. That's why currently there is no any country which is that use purely capitalist features or purely socialist features. All the countries have we call mixed economies, but still some countries like Cuba, so they have more socialist features. That's why they are known as mixed socialist countries. And in some countries mixed capitalist, and especially in mixed capitalist countries and developing countries, so this feature we can see. But still some countries, they are trying to have the indirect taxes at the lowest possible level. So the countries like Cuba, even you may have seen in internet countries like Libya, right, until that their leader was killed, right? So they Gaddafi, right? So he has not put very high burden to the people in that country, even though countries like America wants to get the right. So they makes a lot of issues to, right, so that their people will kill their leader, right? But so you may have seen in that country, so countries like that, right, even Cuba, China, so they try to have the indirect taxes at the lowest possible level, right? Not only developed countries, some countries, and especially countries, that's why still some countries, they prepare their regulations and their constitution so that the people get the least burden, right? So that's why still these countries like Bhutan, right, so they think about their people, right? But when more capitalist features are there, they move to the profit objective, and then what will happen? More tax burden. So uh, I actually have no the exact idea about the tax composition of countries like Cuba, but I think their indirect tax composition may be very much less than our position. So I'll try to get these details, right? So when we consider the reasons for imposing indirect taxes, right? Mainly, right? Many countries, especially developing countries, they use indirect taxes for revenue purpose, right? But there are number of good objectives for government revenue purpose. Even though it is mainly used for government revenue purpose by most of the developing countries, there are good objectives that can be achieved using indirect taxes. What are the other reasons to impose indirect taxes?
Imposing high taxes on harmful products such as liquor and
Exactly. To discourage adverse consumption patterns, indirect taxes can be used, right? To discourage a harmful consumption pattern, right? To discourage harmful consumption patterns, indirect taxes can be used. What else? That's why, as you correctly mentioned, liquor and cigarettes,
yeah.
every budget, so there are new taxes. And if you see the annual report of this CTC, more than more than 50% of their revenue that represent the taxes. But even with that, they make huge profit. So that's why those who are addicted, that so they don't consider about the price, right? That's why we discuss under elasticity also. Those are
Inelastic.
price inelastic products.
Inelastic
Yeah,
products.
inelastic, right? So this discourage harmful consumption pattern. Indirect taxes can be used. What else?
Mm.
And you mentioned under one, the previous government intervention also, to restrict, to control imports, indirect taxes can be used, right? Right, to control imports, indirect taxes can be used. Right, so that is to encourage local producers. The indirect taxes can be used, right, to encourage local producers. Right, to encourage local producers, indirect taxes can be used, right? So there are a number of good objectives that can be achieved using indirect taxes, but mainly, right, in developing countries, one main feature, they use indirect taxes for revenue purpose, right? But there are a number of good objectives which can be achieved using indirect taxes, right? Then we'll see when there is when the indirect tax is imposed, what is the result in the market, right? What are the possible result in the market? So we'll see what are the possible result. Right. So now suppose this is the demand and supply curve for a particular product, right? So these are the demand and supply curve for a particular product, right? Now, if the government imposed indirect tax on this product, right? Currently, this is the equilibrium. Now, if the government imposed indirect tax on this product, what will happen to this, demand and supply? So, initially, which one will change? What is the immediate change after imposing indirect tax?
Supply.
Right? Supply. The immediate result is supply will change. Right? What is the change? Supply will?
Inward.
Supply will?
Supply will shift in.
Yeah, supply curve will shift inward. That means we call it, there will be a decrease in supply. Right? There will be a decrease in supply, and so as you correctly mentioned, what will happen? There will be a inward shift of the supply curve. Right? There will be a inward shift of the supply curve. Right? So there will be inward shift of the supply curve due to this indirect tax, right? If the indirect tax is imposed on the product, so this is the initial result, right? This is the initial result which can arise in the market, right? So this is the initial supply curve, and this is the new supply curve, right? And right. So this was the initial equilibrium. Now what will happen as soon as indirect tax is imposed, right? As soon as the indirect tax imposed, what will happen? There will be a decrease in supply. Decrease in supply means, right? We know that is inward shift of the supply curve, right? There will be an inward shift of the supply curve. Why is that? Right? What is the reason for that? As soon as indirect tax is imposed on a particular product, supply decrease. Why is that? Because initially, right, even though government when the government imposed the indirect tax on a particular product, initially who has to bear the total tax? Who has to pay the total tax at the beginning?
Initially, the supplier.
Suppliers will have to pay the total tax at the beginning, right? Suppliers will have to pay the total tax. But later, right, we know later what they do, they transfer the burden to the consumers, right? Later, they try to transfer the burden to the consumers because that is they will add the tax to the price of the product and will transfer the burden to the consumers, right? But initially, the tax must be paid, right? The total tax must be paid by the producers, right? The total tax must be paid by the producers. Then right, so then what is the possible result? So when since initial, right, when we consider this import tax on vehicle, right, the importer, the company, the right seller has to pay the total tax at the time of importing, right? But later what they do, they add the tax to the price of the product and transfer the burden to the consumers, right? So this is what happened, which means as soon as the indirect tax imposed on a particular product, what will happen? The cost of production increase. When the cost of production increase, right, we have discussed earlier what are the main factors affecting to the supply. Under that, one main factor is cost of production. If the cost of production increase, what is the result? This is the possible result, right? What will happen? The supply will decrease. Supply will decrease. When the supply decrease for a particular product, then what is the possible result? Then what happens?
Demand increase.
Demand? No, you know,
Sorry. Supply increase.
when the supply decrease, what will happen in the market? When supply decrease, we know what will happen. When the supply of a particular product is reduced in the market.
The demand increase.
Demand increase.
No, actually, as soon as supply decrease, right, what happened to that, that product? Now, what is the new equilibrium?
Price increase.
Price increase, right? The immediate result is price increase. As the, right, the first, possible result is supply decrease. As soon as the price decrease, right, because the supply decrease. Why supply decrease? Supply decrease due to the increase in the cost of production. And then what will happen, right? The price will increase. Price will increase, right? Price will increase because one thing, the the tax will be added to the price of the product. Tax will be added to the price of the product, and then what will happen? The price of the product will increase, right? The price of the product will increase, but always, at least theoretical, right? Always the supplier will not be able to add the total tax to the price of the product, right? So now what will happen? The price will increase to this level, right? The price will increase to this level. But always the supplier will not be able to add the total tax to the price of the product, right? Total tax to the price of the. Now this is the new price, right? This is the new price after imposing the indirect tax. After imposing the indirect tax, the price of the product, due to the decrease in supply, price of product will increase. When the price of the product increase, right? Now consumers have to bear this tax, right? The consumers will have to pay, pay this part of the tax, right? So this part of the tax, the consumers will have to pay, right? And actually, this decrease in supply, the decrease in supply depends on what? Depends on the tax per unit. This tax per unit, this vertical distance, the vertical distance between the two supply curve represent the tax per unit. The vertical distance, right? The vertical distance between the two supply curve that indicate the tax per unit. The tax per unit, right? The vertical distance indicate the tax per unit, right? The tax per unit, this vertical distance. The vertical distance between the two supply curves, that shows the tax per unit, right? The tax per unit is given by this vertical distance, right? Vertical distance of the two supply curve is given by, so which is called tax per unit. But we can see always the producers will not be able to add the total tax per unit, right? Total tax per unit to the price of the product. So now this vertical distance, since this is a parallel curve, the vertical distance here or here, so it will be the same, right? It will be same. The vertical distance will be same, right? And here also it's same. Then out of this vertical distance, that means tax per unit, the entire part, the government will not, the producers will not be able to add to the price of the product always. But in many cases, they add the total tax to the price of the product. But always they will not be able to do that. Then what will happen, right? So we can see part of the tax has to be paid by the producers also. Then who has to pay the balance part of the tax? The producers will have to pay, right? So we can see, but this is very rarely we can see this, right? Practically, so we can see this only very rarely. Right? So this vertical distance will be equal at any point, right? Since it is equal at any point, we can see the total vertical distance will not, the producers will not be able to add the total vertical distance to the price of the product, right? The upper part represent the tax burden to the consumers, and this lower part shows the tax burden to the producers, right? So we can see when we consider this upper part of the demand, upper part of this box, this is the tax burden to the consumers, right? So that is the tax burden to the consumers. That is the tax burden to the consumers. But the lower part shows the tax burden to the producers, right? The lower part of the this this is the total tax income to the government, and out of that, so right? So I mean this part. This part shows the tax burden to the consumers, right? So this part is the tax burden to the consumers. Right, so that is the tax burden to the consumers, and the lower part shows the tax burden to the suppliers, right? And this total shaded area, this total part, right? So then this P2 to P3, this part, right? That again you can see it is the vertical distance. That is the vertical distance between the two supply curve, which is the tax per unit, right? So that is the tax per unit, right? Again, so you can see it is the tax per unit. So which is the vertical distance between the two supply curve. Vertical distance between the two supply curve indicate the tax per unit, right? So tax per unit. That is from P2 to P3. Right? So what is the total tax revenue to the government? The total tax revenue to the government is this entire area, right? So even this the lower part is the tax burden to the producers. That is the tax burden to the producers.
So the government will earn from P2 to P3, right?
Exactly. Yes. That's correct. So that is the total revenue to the government, right? So in fact, so if you want to calculate the total tax revenue, that is the total tax per unit to the government. The point you mentioned, P2 to P3, and so if you want to calculate what is the total tax revenue to the government from this product, what is that part?
P1, P3.
No, so this is the tax revenue to the government per unit, and what is the total tax revenue to the government? Total tax revenue to the government. So now after right, so now so if you want to calculate what is the total tax revenue to the government, that is this entire shaded area. This is the tax per unit to the government. So if you want to calculate the tax revenue to the government, right, tax revenue to the government, so we have to calculate the value for this entire area. How do you calculate that? Tax revenue to the government, right? So how do you calculate the tax revenue to the government? That is the entire part, entire area. So how do you calculate that? The tax revenue to the government equal what? It is tax per unit into which quantity? Q1 or Q2? Now tax per unit means
Q2.
Q2. That's correct. So Q2 means what? Q2 means the equilibrium quantity after, right?
After
That
tax.
is the equilibrium quantity after tax. So that's correct. So that means the tax revenue to the government is equal tax per unit it is tax per unit into right, tax per unit into
Q2.
right? So it is tax per unit into equilibrium quantity after tax, right? So equilibrium quantity after tax. Right, so this is the total tax revenue to the government. So total tax revenue to the government, so we can calculate this way, right? So it is the tax per unit into equilibrium quantity after tax. That is total shaded area, so which include the tax burden to the consumers and tax burden to the producers, right? So the entire area is called tax revenue to the government, right? So this is the initial outcome of this indirect tax, right? Once the indirect tax is imposed, what can right, what will happen in the market? So what will happen? So government when the government imposes the indirect tax on the product, the initial result is there will be a decrease in supply. Due to the decrease, the decrease in supply will be based on the tax per unit, and when the supply decrease, we know price will increase. When the price increase, right, that is the burden to the consumers, right? So here, what is the burden to the consumers? So even even though the tax per unit represent the area from P2 to P3, the price of the product in the market increase only by this amount, right? So this is the increase in price. So this is the increase in price in the market, which is the tax burden to the consumers, right? That is the tax burden to the consumers, right? So price will increase from P1 to P2. That is why we identified that as the tax burden to consumers, right? But always the government, the producers will not be able to add the total tax to the price of the product, right? Always, then certain part of the tax should be paid by the producers also, right? But as I mentioned, practically in most of the cases, total tax is added to the price of the product, right? So this is what will happen, right? Actually, when the government is specially imposing indirect tax for this purpose, right? When the government is imposing indirect tax for revenue purpose, right? So they have to consider one fact. They have to select the products with right. What is the condition? What is the economic concept they have to consider when they are imposing indirect taxes? They need to consider the elasticity condition of the product.
Yeah, the products that have the inelastic.
Exactly. So when the government impose indirect taxes, they mainly select products with inelastic demand, right? Products with inelastic demand, right? We discuss what are the main factors that will affect to the elasticity. That means the products, right? The certain products will have inelastic demand. What are the main features? Inelastic demand means what are the products?
Even though the price has changed, the quantity demand will not change.
Yeah. So that means what are the types of goods? What are the types of goods? Mainly government to select which kind of goods. Inelastic means what are the types of goods? One thing is the products without proper substitutes. When there are no substitutes, the demand is inelastic. So, right, that's why government select products like that. For example, fuel, right? So whatever the tax imposed, right, no options for the consumers, they have to buy. No substitutes. That is one criteria. What else? Government will select essential products, right? Essential means inelastic. When the product is essential, the right, so whatever the tax they impose, the consumers will have to pay that, right? They also select, you mentioned earlier,
habitual products,
habit forming goods, right? Addicted goods. They select. Why? The demand is inelastic. Whatever the tax, the consumers will buy that, right? So these are the main conditions government will consider, right? So they will select the products with inelastic demand. Because if the government impose tax on goods with elastic, with high elastic demand, then what will happen? Once the price increase, there will be huge decrease in the quantity demand. And when there is a significant decrease in the quantity demand, then what will happen? The government will not be able to earn sufficient tax revenue. So that's why when the government is imposing indirect taxes, the government will mainly select products with inelastic demand. When the demand is inelastic, after the supply decrease, even if there is a significant increase in the price, there will not be a significant decrease in the quantity, right? The quantity will decrease only by, right? So because we discussed under elasticity this point, right? So we discussed this, right? So here you can see, even if there is a significant increase in price, the quantity will decrease only by small percentage, right? Therefore, government will be able to make huge revenue. But if we consider this other way, when the price increase, what will happen? If the demand is elastic, huge decrease in the quantity. When the quantity decrease significantly, then what will happen? Only small quantity will be traded in the market. The government will not be able to make earn good tax revenue if they impose tax on products with elastic demand. That's why this elasticity concept is very important for the government, right? When they impose indirect taxes, right? So that's why when the government is imposing indirect taxes, they mainly consider products with inelastic demand. Okay, so these are the key points relating to the indirect taxes. Actually, when we know the basic concepts relating to indirect taxes, right? Indirect taxes, we have to spend only very little time to consider the impact of subsidies, right? Subsidy, it is just the opposite of this concept, because when there is when the government grant a subsidy, then what will happen? Right, government grant a subsidy mainly for the benefit of these parties. When there is a tax, we saw that due to the tax, what will happen? There will be burden to consumers and producers, right? There will be burden to consumers and producers. But when the government is granting a subsidy, right? Subsidies, then what will happen? There will be benefit, right? There will be benefit, right? So subsidies also can be granted for the benefit of both parties. Subsidy can be granted for the benefit of consumers, or it can be granted for the benefit of producers, which means there are two types of subsidies, right? There are two types of subsidies, right? So they are known as production subsidies and consumption subsidies, right? Production subsidy mean in order to encourage producers, right? In order to encourage producers, the government will make a subsidy payment to the producers, right? So to encourage production and to increase production. So in that case, certain amount per each unit, right, will be paid by the government. In that case, payment should be made to whom? The government will make the payment to suppliers, producers, right? The government will make the payment to the producers for each unit they produce or they supply, right? And if the government is planning to grant consumption subsidy, that is for the benefit of consumers, right? If the government is planning to grant a subsidy to the consumers, in that case, the payment should be made to who?
Payment should be consumers.
Right? Is it possible to make the payment to the consumers with respect to one particular product?
No,
right? Because,
government can give a concession or something.
Yeah, so actually, so that is the way of giving even the consumption subsidy. That means subsidy payment should be made to whom? Payment should be made to the producers. Even if it is a consumption subsidy, the payment should be made to the producers. Then, right? But then how the benefit is going to the consumers? The producers will not get any benefit, because, for example, suppose a particular product is selling in the market for 20 rupees. And government is saying this 20 rupees is too much. This should be sold to the consumers at 10 rupees. Then, so what the government will do? The government will make a subsidy payment to the producers. So each unit they produce and sell 10 rupees per unit. But they have to sell the product to the consumers at 10 rupees. Then who is getting the benefit? Then the consumers are getting the benefit, right? There is no benefit to the producers. So that is called the consumption subsidy, right? So whether it is a consumption subsidy or a production subsidy, the payment should be made to the producers. But in the case of consumption subsidy, the producers will have to sell the product to the consumers at a concessionary price. But there is no requirement like that in the case of a production subsidy, right? And so when the government grant a subsidy to the suppliers, right, then what will happen in the market? So when we consider the original demand and supply condition, when a subsidy is granted, what will happen in the market? What is the immediate result?
Supply will increase.
Supply will increase, right? So that's why I mentioned it is just the opposite, right? It is just the opposite. Initial, right, supply level will increase. Supply will increase. Supply increase means we know there will be outward shift of the supply, right? There will be outward shift of the supply curve, right? Supply will increase. When the supply increase, right? When the supply of a particular product increase in the market, what is the possible result? What is the possible result? The price will
Decrease.
decrease, right? So here also this shift of the supply curve depends on what? That depends on the subsidy per unit, right? It depends on subsidy per unit, right? Subsidy per unit. Therefore, the price will decrease, right? The price will decrease. Price will decrease due to the subsidy, right? Due to the subsidy, price will decrease in the market, and that vertical distance is called the subsidy per unit. Due to the decrease in price, who is getting that benefit? When the price decrease, who is getting that benefit? That is the benefit to the consumers, right? So this is the subsidy benefit, right? Subsidy benefit to the consumers. Right, subsidy benefit to the consumers, that is when the price decrease, that is the subsidy benefit to the consumers, right? But what will happen, in addition to the price in addition to the price the producers getting from the consumers, they also get a subsidy payment from the government, so that means they will get
subsidy benefit for the
producers, right, or suppliers. Right, subsidy benefit to the suppliers. Right, in this case, actually, what is the quantity that will be traded in the market? Right, so now when the subsidy, when the government grant a subsidy, now what is happened? What is the new equilibrium price? The new equilibrium price will be this. This is the new equilibrium price because now supply has increased. When the supply increase, now what will happen? This will be the new equilibrium, right? So that will be the new equilibrium. So that is the subsidy benefit to the producers and the subsidy benefit to the consumers. Right, so in this case, because this was the initial quantity, and after the granting the subsidy, this quantity will increase, right? Quantity will increase. So you can see, so it's easy. After we discuss the indirect tax, this is just the opposite, right? So then what will happen after granting the subsidy? The supply of the product will increase. When the supply increase, the price will decrease. When the price decrease, that is the benefit to the consumers, and suppliers also getting, in addition to the price they get from the consumers, they will get the subsidy per unit from the government. Therefore, they get overall this price, and the quantity in the market will increase, right? But here we can see this is the subsidy per unit paid by the government per unit. And what is the total subsidy expenditure to the government? Right? What is the total subsidy expenditure to the government? This entire shaded area represents the subsidy expenditure to the government. Therefore, we can see some subsidy expenditure, right? Subsidy expenditure to the government, we can identify what is the, right? So how do you calculate the subsidy expenditure to the government? That is
subsidy per unit into
subsidy per unit into equilibrium quantity after
Q2.
subsidy. In this case, it is Q2, right? As you mentioned, it is Q2, right? Because we can see after the subsidy, the quantity has increased, right? Even though the quantity decreased after tax, but after the subsidy, the quantity increased. With the quantity increase, due to the decrease in price, the entire shaded area will be the subsidy expenditure to the government, right? So, yeah.
Sir, what about the fertilizer subsidy? How we can interpret it?
Yeah, actually, that is a production subsidy. So in the production subsidy, the total amount is paid to the producers. That is to right. Actually, that is paid not per unit, right? So for the right. So in that case, we can't directly identify what is the increase in quantity due to this, but that is actually to provide certain benefit to the farmers to buy that particular to buy fertilizer, right? It is provided at a very low price, and sometimes free of charge. Certain amounts quantity will be paid. That actually we can't directly relate into the quantity they can sell. That is actually to encourage the producers to increase the local production. That is subsidy granted by the government.
Okay.
Right. So then, so these are the key points relating to the different types of government intervention. So here we mainly discuss three types of government intervention. Price controls. Under price controls, we discuss two types of price control: maximum price and minimum price. And so what are the possible results? What are the adverse results? What are the steps taken to overcome adverse results? And here for the minimum price also, what are the possible results? What are the adverse results? What are the steps that can be taken to avoid adverse results? And then indirect taxes and subsidies, right? So these are the key points we right. So we covered under the price theory, right? So under the price theory, so these are the key points we discussed earlier in right, and all the key concepts relating to the main concept relating to the price theory we discussed, right? So after that we can move to the next value, right? I think we can take a break. We'll take a break, right? So we discuss the key points relating to price, then the next key variable, the quantity. That means we need to discuss production, right? So then, right, so we'll take a break, and after that, we'll start the production.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello, Himali.
Tony.
Shall we start again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, will do.
Right. Uh, Right. So so far we discussed the key points relating to price, right? After that we can move to the next main point relevant for the total revenue, right? So that is quantity, right? Quantity. So we call it right. So that means we need to discuss what are the factors affecting to the quantity, right? So that is we call it production theory, right? So that means what is the factors relating to the changes in quantity, that is we call it production theory, right? Production theory, right? So now that means in order to maximize revenue, in addition to the price of the product, right? So the points we discussed so far, the factors, the key concepts relating to the price of the product. So the price is determined by demand and supply market forces, and when it is decided, we call it equilibrium. Then what are the factors affecting to the equilibrium? Then what is the meaning of elasticity, and what is the impact of elasticity to the changes in prices? And then to change the price, what is the impact, the influence from the government intervention? So all the points we discussed relating to the price. Now we need to discuss production theory, right? That means what are the factors affecting to the quantity? So when the firm is producing a particular product, what are the main factors that should be considered, right? So in this case, right, actually when we analyze production and the cost of production, the period we consider is also very important. That means the behavior of the production, right, and production functions, we need to discuss in two main time periods. That means what is the behavior of the production in the short run, and what is the behavior in the long run, right? So we need to discuss the behavior of production in the short run and long run, right? So so first of all, we'll discuss. We can discuss what is the short run production function, right? Short run production function. Short run production function, and after that we need to discuss what is the behavior of the production in the long run, right? So long run production function, right? Long run production function. So production, we need to discuss several key production concepts, right? So the behavior of several key production concepts, right? That is the total production, average production, and marginal production. So several production functions. Then so under these theories, we need to discuss several key production concepts. One main concept is called the stages of production. In other words, we call 3 stages of production. 3 stages of production we need to discuss. Then the behavior of, under the behavior of the production, there is one main concept we analyze, which is known as the law of diminishing returns, right? Law of diminishing returns. Diminishing returns. And then another key concept, the law of right, sorry, another main concept So when we move to the long run production concepts, right? When we move to the long run production concepts, then so we have to discuss another key points known as isocon curves, right? So we'll discuss in detail the meaning of these isocon curves, right? With that, we need to discuss about another main concept known as returns to scale. Law of returns to scale. Right, so these are the main points we need to discuss, right? So when we discuss about this short run production function, so we need to discuss about several key production functions: total production, average production, and marginal production, right? So several key production functions, and with that we can discuss the behavior of this production function. So these are the key areas we are planning to cover under the production theory, right? So after we discuss the price theory, right, then we are going to discuss the key points relating to the production theory, right? So production theory. Right. Okay. First of all, we need to know the difference between this short run and long run, right? So when we, whenever we discuss about production and cost of production, these two time periods very much important, right? What is the meaning of short run and what is the meaning of long run, right? So this classification we use in many subjects, even in accounts. You know, the assets and liabilities we categorize into two areas: current assets, non-current assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities. There, what is the criteria we use, right? What is the criteria we use in accounts to categorize assets and liabilities, current and non-current? What is the criteria? Current liabilities means what? Current liabilities means the liabilities, right, that should be settled within the period of 1 year. So there are current and non-current classification we do according to the time period, right? Current means asset or liabilities, that means with relevant for 1 year period, right? The assets that will be utilized within 1 year, the liabilities that should be settled within 1 year. But non-current assets means the assets that will be used for a period more than 1 year. Non-current liabilities means the liabilities that will be settled over a period more than 1 year, right? So there, what is the criteria? It is a specific time period. It is more than 1 year or less than 1 year. In economics, right? In economics, also the short run and long run, right, depends on the time period or any other factor, right? What is the criteria? What is the criteria that determine the short run and long run? Yeah, any idea? Right, what is the criteria that determine short run and long run? Short run means what? In accounts, it is a time period. It is a specific time period. Current means 1 year, non-current means more than 1 year. In economics also, the short run and long run depends on the same criteria or different criteria?
Different criteria. Factors
Different
of.
criteria. Yeah. What is the
Factors,
criteria?
in short run, one factor has to be fixed, and in long
Exactly.
run,
Exactly. Short run means at least one factor is fixed, right? Short run means there are fixed factors, and as you correctly mentioned, at least one factor is fixed, right? That means, right, that is the criteria for the short run and long run, right? Short run means at least one factor is fixed, right? So that means we can say short run means there are fixed factors. There are fixed factors. So, right, we can say at least one factor is fixed, right? At least one factor is fixed, right? So fixed factors must be there. At least one factor must be fixed, right? That is the meaning of short run. But long run means what? Long run means no fixed factors, right? So long run means there are no fixed factors. All the factors are variable, right? Long run, there are no fixed factors, right? There are no fixed factors. All the factors are variable. All the factors are variable, right? So that is the meaning of short run and long run. So this is very important when we analyze production and cost of production, right? Production and cost of production, when we analyze this concept is very important, right? Short run means at least one factor is fixed, right? But long run there are no fixed factors, right? And we know, right, these factors means we discussed in the very first session, right? In the very first session we discussed the factors of production, right? What are the main factors of production? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, right? In this, when we consider these factors, we know there are two main factors we used to produce, right? All four factors are used, but there are two main factors that use for the production, and actually based on that, two main production techniques also discussed in economics. What are the two main factors? What are the two main factors? That is
land and labor.
Yeah, actually, the which determine the production techniques in economics. There are two main production techniques. What are the two main production techniques? We call labor intensive and
And capital intensive.
capital intensive, right? And so we know land, entrepreneurship, this they are also important. But two main production techniques: labor intensive and production capital intensive. And you when we consider this short run production function, usually in the short run, what is the right? Mainly, what is the fixed factor? Mainly, what is the fixed factor in the short run?
Capital.
Capital. Capital is the right mainly the fixed factor is capital. Right, fixed factor is capital. Right. Therefore, this actually this short run and long run mainly depends on the ability to change capital. Right. Therefore, when we analyze the short run production function, we mainly start with we mainly consider other factors are constant. What is the variable factor? The variable factor is labor, right? So when we consider labor as the variable factor, right, assuming other factors constant, other factors fixed. For example, capital and even land, right, fixed, right? So when we consider land and capital as the fixed factors, right? Land and capital we consider as fixed factors, then we consider the variable factor is labor, right? Assuming the land and labor remain at the same level, if the producer change only labor, what will happen to the production, right? So suppose these are right. We'll put some constant figures like this. Suppose land and labor remain at the same level, right, for a given level, right? But only thing that will be changed is labor, right? If the producer change labor while other factors remain same, right? So what will happen to the this production? So that is what we need to identify, right, under the short run production. So to identify the short run production function, we mainly focus on this, right? If the firm change only labor while other factors remain same, right? Other factors remain same, only labor the firm is going to change, right? Firm is going to change only labor while other factors remain same, right? Only labor firm is going to change, right? Then what will happen to the production, right? So production, as I mentioned here, we can analyze three main production functions, right? What are the three main production functions? Total production, average production,
Marginal
and
production.
marginal production, right? So total production, average production, and marginal production, right? Right. So then, so when we consider these different factors, different concepts, production concepts, right? We can see the behavior of these different production concepts when the firm change only labor, right? So here you can see, right, in this example, you can see very clearly the firm change only labor, while other factors, right? Only labor is changed, while other factors, other resources remain at the same level, right? So if there is no product, no labor, no production will be there, right? And we can see what is the impact to this production function when only labor change, right? For example, suppose when only one worker is there, right? Within during given period of time, using a given level of land and capital, suppose 2 units of a particular product can be produced, right? So for example, within the given area of land using certain level of capital which remains same, when one worker is used within the given period of time, right, say for a day or per hour, so they can produce 2 units of a given product. And if they increase labor, right, so within the same period, right, within the same time, so what is the number of units that can be produced? What will happen to the total production? We know total production will increase. Total production will increase to which level? Generally. Here we are considering the general level. So this will increase to 4, less than 4, or more than 4. Normally, we know definitely when labor increase, total production will increase. Total production, right, generally under normal condition, because we know always in economics we talk about general condition, possible condition, right? So rational condition, logical condition, right? So if the number of workers increase from 1 to 2, what will happen to the total production? Total production will increase to 4, more than 4, or less than 4, generally. Generally, what will be the result? It will increase to 4, more than 4, or less than 4.
Less than 4.
Generally what will happen, because right, when only one worker is there, when we consider a particular production, right, production of a particular product, then what he has to do, he has to do all the tasks relating to that particular production, right? Maybe, right, so if we consider one worker is doing a small garment factory, so then so what will happen? Only one machine is there, one room is there. So right, capital and labor same, number of workers we change. Only when there is only one worker, all the tasks relating to that particular production, he or she has to do. Right? Maybe cutting the clothes, sewing, ironing, packing, everything. So then only 2 units can be produced. When there are 2 workers, usually what happens? Right? What will happen to the production? Right, this is under normal condition.
Production
right?
increase.
Production increase to 4 or more than 4, generally.
Less than 4.
Why is that? Why is that less than 4? Right, normally when there are 2 workers, what will happen? So I'm sure you know one particular concept. So I remember even in our school we learned this. When there are more workers, what can be done? The production process can be divided into different stages, right? Rather than all the tasks performed by one worker. So what will do, or right, what will happen? The production process can be divided into different stages, right? When there are 2 workers, and when there are when it increases to 3 again, right? So what will happen? Then production process can be divided into several stages, right? Right. That means one worker need not to do all the things, all the tasks. So he will engage in only one task, right? So then one worker maybe cutting the clothes, and then the next one is sewing the clothes, right? After that, the other one can iron, and then the next one can, these 2 people, so they can work that way. And due to that, usually what will happen? Right? Usually what will happen? The production will increase to more than 4, right? So more than 4. And if they increase to 3, number of workers, if they increase to 3, the production process can be divided further. Then one worker has to, right, only cutting the clothes, then sewing the clothes and packing. Then what will happen? The worker who is doing a particular task again and again, what is the result? What is the result? Right?
Production increase.
He will specialize in that, right? The segregation, segregation of the different stages into different workers. We call it what? We call it division of labor, right? I'm sure you know, right? So this is division of labor. Shrama vibhajane kila apne iskole kiwe, right? Division of labor. As a result of division of labor, what is the result? What is the result of the division of labor? Specialization. Specialization. Then one worker has to do only simple task, right? Then what will happen? The productivity increase, right? Therefore, the production may increase this way, right? So initially, only when one worker is there, he or she has to do everything. Only 2 units can be produced. When there are 2 workers, production process can be divided into several, right? Maybe 2 steps. Only 2 workers there. Then productivity may increase. When there are 3 workers, it may increase further. But right, so this is the result of the division of labor and specialization. But one thing we need to consider, what is that? Even though the number of workers increase, capital remains same. Therefore, these benefits of specialization can be obtained only up to a certain level. When the number of workers increase continuously, is it possible to get the benefit of this division of labor continuously?
No.
No, right? Only up to a certain level. Right after that, the production will not increase at an increasing rate like this. It might increase, but not an increasing rate like this. After that, it may be increased to maybe 12, right? It may be then 14, right? Then it may be 15, right? So you saw that initially it increased at an increasing rate, right? It was increasing at an increasing rate. Then it was increasing at a decreasing rate, right? But it was increasing. But if they increase further, then what will happen? This will not increase. This will not increase. And if the firm try to increase labor further, it is not increasing, but it might decrease. Right? Actually, this is the normal pattern, but this is not correct for all the goods. Right? Sometimes the increasing trend may reverse soon. For some products, this increasing trend may continue for a fairly longer period, right? But one thing is common. What is that? Initially, it will increase at an increasing rate, then it will increase at a decreasing rate, and finally, it will start to decrease. This is the normal pattern, right? This is the normal pattern when the firm increase the production. So this is the normal pattern, right? That's why at the beginning also I mentioned logically. For logical workers, right? For rational people, this is the result. But there are cases which is totally against this, right? So sometimes practically this may not happen for some products, right? So I remember, right, a small story, right? In a school in maths paper, right? Maybe in grade 4 or 5, one question has been there. One lady can complete 5 kajans per hour. Kajans, pollatu pahak piyanna puluwan eka kanta. කාන්තාවන් දෙදෙනෙකුට පැයකදී පොල්ලතු කීයක් පියන්න පුළුවන්? එක ළමයෙක් ලියලා එකක්වත් බෑ. right? ඇයි? ඉතින් මේ දෙන්න කතා ගන්න පටන් ගත්තාම පොල්ලතු යන්නේ නැහැ. right? right? So that can happen. Right? Then but here, that's why I mentioned under normal condition. Right? So for rational decision makers, that's why in economics, right, we always assume the decision makers are rational. Right? Decision makers are rational. That's why rationally, logically, this is the condition. Right? But these numbers just show the pattern, which is not equally applicable for all the products. This is the normal pattern. That means, what is the normal pattern? Initially, production will increase at an increasing rate due to the benefits of division of labor and specialization. But these benefits can be obtained only up to a certain point. After that, it will increase at a decreasing rate, then it will start to decrease. So this is what will happen, right? So this is what will happen, right? right? Normally, this is the pattern. This is the pattern of production. Total production usually take this pattern, right? Initially, it will increase, right? It will increase at an increasing rate. It will increase at an increasing rate. Then it will increase at a decreasing rate, and finally it will start to decrease. So this is the pattern of the total production, right? So total production curve, this is the pattern. It will increase at an increasing rate, then it will increase at a decreasing rate, then it will reach maximum level for the given level of capital and land, then it will start to decrease. So total production will take this shape, right? What is the meaning of average production? What is the meaning of average production? So how do you calculate average production? Right? So how do you calculate average production? Average production, that is a very simple concept, right? So it's a very simple concept. So average production means, right? So these are called value per unit, average production. Average means total production divided by, in this case, the input is labor, right? Since the input is labor, right? Total production divided by labor, right? So average production means total production divided by labor, right? That means total production divided by labor. Now, what happened to the, so when there is no production, no output, right? There is no average, no output, right? So when the labor increase, now what happened to the average production? What happened to the average production? Right? What happened to the average production?
It is also going as an increasing rate, then again decreasing rate, then decrease.
Exactly. Average production also will increase at the beginning, then start to decrease, right? It is also, you can see, it is increasing at the beginning, then start to decrease, right? Right? That means, what is the meaning of average production? Average production is the production per unit of input, production per unit of given input, right? Now, what is the meaning of marginal production? What is the meaning of marginal production? Right? Marginal production means yeah,
This one labor, what is the quantity will increase?
exactly. For each additional worker, what is the additional quantity? Right? So marginal production means what is the change in the total production per unit change in labor, right? Because in this case, input is labor. If labor change by 1 unit, what is the change in the total production, right? Which means the change in total production should be divided by the change in labor, right? So here the change in labor is always 1. So we can simply use the change in production, right? So when the labor increase from 0 to 1, the production increase from 0 to 2. What is the marginal production? The marginal production is 2, right? So this is actually, we calculate this, right? And the same formula we have used. What happened to the marginal production? The marginal production, we can identify this, right? So when only 1 worker is there, production is 2. When there are 2 workers, production is 5. That means marginal production is 3. When labor increase from 2 to 3, production increase from 5 to 9. Marginal production is 4, right? So in this way, we can see the behavior of the marginal production, right? Marginal production. What is the pattern of the marginal production?
Again increasing in an increasing rate.
Again, marginal production increasing up to a certain point and then start to decrease, right? So we can see the pattern of, right, these 3 curves. Right? So we can identify the behavior of these 3 production curves, right? So we can identify the behavior of these 3 production curves. All 3 production curves, we can identify these, total production, average production, marginal production initially increase, right? It is increasing at the beginning, then reach a maximum level, then start to decrease, right? So for this, we use a special type, special term for this, concept. We use a special term. What is that?
Diminishing of marginal return.
Exactly. This is called the law of diminishing returns, right? Right. So this is the pattern of the short run production, right? So this is the short run production function, right? So you can see the behavior of the total production, average production, total production, average production, and marginal production, right? Total production, average production, and marginal production, right? All three production curves increase at the beginning, then start to decrease, right? So this is known as the law of diminishing returns, right? So this is called law of diminishing returns. Right. That means, what is the meaning of the law of diminishing returns? What is the meaning of law of diminishing returns? When the firm is increasing their input, right, variable input, while the other, while the fixed input remains same, right, what will happen? The production will gradually diminish, right? Production will gradually decrease. So that is what is known as the law of diminishing return. The law of diminishing return, right? That means when one variable, one factor is changed, right? So here you can see only one variable is changed, while other variables, other factors remain same. Only one factor is changed when other factors remain same. Then what happened? So this is the production per this variable factor. What is the pattern? The right when only one variable is changed, that means one variable factor, while the other factors are constant, the production will increase only up to a certain point, then start to decrease, right? And when you observe these three curves, right, all three curves increase at the beginning and start to decrease. What is the production function that start to decrease first? Total production, average production, or marginal production?
Average production.
Average production. Which one is starting to decrease first? So you can see that from the table. You can see that from the graph. Which one is starting to decrease first?
Marginal.
Marginal production. First of all, you can see marginal production start to decrease, right? Marginal production start to decrease, so which means this law of diminishing returns start here, right? The law of diminishing returns start here. Right, the law of diminishing returns start from that point, right? From this point, the diminishing returns start from this point. So when the marginal production start to decrease, that is the point the diminishing return starts, right? So diminishing returns start from that point. When the marginal, marginal production. So that's why right. So you mentioned earlier that word, right? What is that? So this you call it law of diminishing marginal return, right? Because this marginal concept is used not only in production but even in utility. Because in utility theory, that word is specifically
marginal
right?
utility.
Yeah, that's why it is called the law of diminishing marginal utility. But in production, this word is used because right. But there also you can see what is the production function that start to decrease first. That is marginal production. So therefore, it's even possible to say law of diminishing marginal return, right? But this is generally called the law of diminishing returns, right? But what is the first production function start to decrease? That is marginal, right? So the law of diminishing return means, right, when only one factor is changed while the other factors remain constant, the production will gradually decrease. That is the meaning of law of diminishing returns, right? When one factor is changed, right? When one factor is changed while other factors remain constant, right? When only one factor is changed, one factor is changed while other factors remain unchanged or remain constant, the production of the variable factor, production from the variable factor, gradually decrease, eventually decrease. So this is the meaning of the law of.
I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
Now, this law of diminishing returns that we learn as a concept, is it always the case that it will happen in the real world? Because now we have changed only what you call the labor.
Yeah.
Variable is the labor. When it comes to real world, where the labor is that we can say that not everyone is efficient enough.
Yeah, because that's right. So here, actually, that's a good point. Actually, this short run and long run, right? So I forgot to mention earlier, short run and long run in accounts. Whatever the company, short run is and long run, same for all the companies. Short run, right? Current non-current classification is same for any company, right? So, but in economics, the short run and long run, is that same for all the companies?
No.
No, because short run, right, as you very correctly mentioned, short run means the period where some factors are fixed. But, right, so that means in some companies, they can't certain factors for a long period of time. That means short run may be a couple of years also, right? That means, for example, for one company, they may not be able to change capital, right? So mostly this long run and short run depends on the ability to change capital, because capital is the fixed factor for many companies, right? Therefore, capital is fixed for some companies, right, and many companies in the short run, right? That means to change the capital, that means factories, machineries, those are the main things we consider as capital. Factories, machineries, right? These things. For certain companies, to change these factors, they may require a very long period, so that a couple of years. But for another company, maybe within 2-3 months, they can change capital. That means for one company, short run may be 2 months or 3 months. For another company, short run may be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, right? So that's why the question you asked are very much related to this, right? For some company, they can change only labor for a considerable period. But for another company in the real world, so they can change capital also quickly. That means short run is a very short period. So it may be only a couple of months, right? That means very quickly they can change capital also. If other factors also can be changed, then not happen. Then this is not the pattern. They can change total production. They can increase total production, maybe continuously for a long period, right?
So
the pattern.
That means the in the short run production, there's a maximum limit that you can produce.
Exactly. Because in the short run, there is a maximum level the production can be increased. Why other factors same, capital is same. So even if, right, the simple example I mentioned earlier, one girl, one machine, right? So even if the number of workers increase to 10 or 15, there is only one machine to to produce the product. So that means cutting the clothes and, right, so it may be done by number of people, but still only one machine is. That means there is a maximum level that can be produced for a given period of time. Right. But if the number of machines also can be increased, so that's why the point you mentioned is very well. It's so one company may be able to increase capital also very quickly. Then if the capital also can be increased, they will be able to increase production, right, for a longer period than this, right? So that's why, but general pattern is this, right? Generally, in the short run, capital is fixed, right? Some factors fixed. Therefore, production can be increased only up to a certain point. After that, it start to decrease. Right? So diminishing return explain when one factor is only one factor is changed while the other factors remain constant, production from the variable factor gradually decrease. Right? And so when we observe this total production, average production, and marginal production, we can identify several important relationships. Right? We can identify several important relationships. Right? What is the important relationship we can identify between total production and marginal production? Right? What are the important things we can identify under total production and marginal production? That we can identify from this table. We can identify from this graph. Right? One very important relationship between total production and marginal production. What is that? What is that? You can identify a very important relationship between total production and marginal production. Right? What is that relationship?
Into the total production, it is going on an increasing rate, then going on a decreasing rate, and thereafter it decreases.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. So that means that particular pattern is applicable for all three production functions. All three production functions increase at the beginning, then start to decrease. Right. But in addition to that, several key relationships can be identified. Right, among these production functions. One relationship between total production and marginal production. What is that relationship? What is that relationship?
The angle, that means increase the total production increasing, try to decrease, and at the same time marginal production is also going to be decreased. That
but we can see marginal production start to decrease first, right? But here total production still increase.
When the marginal production comes to zero by decrease, and the total production is at the top.
Exactly. So that is the special relationship. That is the special relationship when the total production is maximum, marginal production is zero. Right. So that special relationship we can see. Right, when the total production is maximum, marginal production is zero. Right. That is one special relationship between the total production and marginal production. Right. The point you mentioned earlier also, right, we can consider, but here you can see when the total, all three production function increase at the beginning, start to decrease. But we can see here marginal production decrease, but still total production increase. Right. That means there also we can see one important thing. As long as total production is increasing, the value of marginal production is positive. Marginal production may be increasing or decreasing, but it is positive, right? But when the total production maximize, marginal production is zero. And when the total production start to decrease, then what happens? The marginal production is negative, right? So that special relationship we can identify between total production and marginal production, right? So what is the special relationship between total production and marginal production?
When the total production goes
when the total production is maximum, marginal production is zero, right? So we can identify when total production is maximum, marginal production is zero. Marginal production is zero, right? So we can put this relationship. We can explain in using another point. That means as long as total production is right, when total production is rising, marginal production may be rising or falling, but it is positive, right? So when total production is rising, marginal production is positive, right? But whenever the total production start to decrease, right, marginal production is negative, right? So you can see when total production is falling, when total production is falling, the marginal production is negative. When total production is falling, marginal production is negative.
So that means that when you reach the maximum level of your production,
Yeah.
then you don't have the capability or the capacity to build one or more unit.
Yeah. So that in other words, once the company identify this level, they should not increase factors further. Because if they, right, for example, when we apply to this one, if they should increase labor only up to this level. So if they increase labor more than this, what will happen? They will have additional cost, but production start to decrease, right? So that's why
this is also related to production possibility curve, right?
Oh yeah, so this is also relating to, we can relate to production possibility curve, the maximum production that can be achieved. Right, for a given level of inputs. Yeah. So this relationship we can see between total production and marginal production. So between total production and marginal production, this special relationship we can identify. Right, and so we can identify another special relationship between average production and marginal production curve also. Right, so we can identify a special relationship between average production and marginal production. Average production and marginal production. What is the special relationship between average production and marginal production? And also you can identify from this table or from this graph. Average production and marginal production also we can see a special relationship. Right? What is that?
There is an intercept.
Yeah, intercept at the point of intersection. Is there a special condition?
Both are decreasing at the same rate.
No, actually at this point of intersection, what is the value of you can see what is the nature of the average production curve. Average production is, that is the maximum point of the average production.
Yeah.
Right, when the marginal production curve crosses the average production is maximum. Right, so that is the other special condition. Right, average production will be at the maximum point when the marginal production curve crosses the average production. Right, so you can explain that this way. Right, so you can see the marginal production curve crosses average production curve when average production is maximum. When average production is maximum. Right, when average production is maximum. Marginal production curve crosses the average production when average production is maximum. Right, so we can identify this relationship in another way. We can see up to this point, if this is the maximum point, average production is increasing. That means as long as, right, when average production is increasing, marginal production is more than average production. But as soon as the average production start to decrease, marginal production is less than. Right, so we can see when average production is rising, average production is rising, marginal production is greater than average production. Marginal production is greater than average production. Right, when marginal production rising. But when average production is falling, marginal production is
MP lesser than MP.
Yeah, MP lesser than AP. Right, so these special relationships we can identify between these production functions. Right, between these production function we can identify these special relationship. Right, so that is the other key condition. right? Actually, based on these two relationships, right, among these production functions, this production function is divided into 3 stages, right? The production function divided into 3 stages based on these two relationships, right? Based on these two relationships, the production function is divided into 3 stages, right? 3 stages. What are the 3 stages? The first stage is from 0, right? From the origin to the point where the marginal production is maximum, right? Oh, sorry, it is not here. The average production is maximum. So average production is maximum. So it is this point. It is this point, right? So average production is maximum. So that is what we call stage 1. Stage 1. And the stage 2, right? Stage 2 is the point, the range from
maximum, total production maximum.
Yeah. From total production, from average production maximum to the total production maximum level. Right, and the third stage is, right, third stage represent the range which the total production is 40, right? Total production is 40, right? So in this way, so we can identify the 3 stages of production. 3 stages of production can be identified using these main steps. Right, stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Right, stage 1 represent the range of point up to the maximum point of the average production, and the stage through the 2 represent from the point of average production maximum to the point total production is maximum, and the stage 3 represent the range over which the total production is 40. Right, that means we can divide, right? So this is called the 3 stages of production. The 3 stages of production, we can identify the 3 stages of production, right? The 3 stages of production. What are the 3 stages? Stage 1 represent, right? So that is from the origin, from 0. From origin, that means from 0 to the point of maximum average production. Maximum average production, right? And the stage 2 represent, the stage 2 represent from the point of, right? So that is from the point of from the average, so from maximum average production point to the total production maximum point, right? From the point of maximum average production to the point of maximum, yeah, maximum total production. Maximum total production, right? And the stage 3 represent the range over which the total production is 40, right? So that is the range range over which the total production is falling. Total production is falling means we know marginal production is negative, right? So these are known as the 3 stages. So that means when you observe the production function of a particular product, these 3 stages can be identified, right? Initially, the total production is increasing at an increasing rate, and average production also increasing. Average production is increasing means the production per worker is increasing, right? Then in the stage 2, even though the average production per worker is decreasing, the total production is still increasing. That means, right, for each additional worker, there are additional content, right? That means additional units are produced, so which is useful for the company. But in stage 3, the company increasing inputs, but outputs start to decrease. Therefore, when you analyze these 3 stages, you can see any rational producer will not move to which stage?
Stage 3.
Stage 3. Any rational producer will not move to stage 3. Then, out of stage 1 and 2, right? What is the stage that will be selected by a producer? What is the stage the producer prefer to select?
Stage 2.
Stage 2, right? Because stage 2 is the stage that the producer is willing to select, because that is the stage he can maximize the production. The production can be maximized within the within this stage. We can see both average production and marginal production falling, but still the total production is increasing, right? Therefore, the maximum production can be reached, right, within the stage 2, right? Therefore, rational producer will select, right? Rational producers will select stage 2, right? Rational producer will select to operate in stage 2, right? Stage 2, right? Any producer will not select will not move to stage 3, because there he should identify what is the maximum level of inputs that should be used, right? Because this is the stage he can maximize the production, right? So production will start to decrease if he move to stage 3, and more cost, additional inputs, more cost, and the production still will start to decrease. Therefore, this is the stage the producer will be able to maximize the production, right? Therefore, when we consider these different stages of production, right? So the classification of these stages of production is based on these important relationships, right? You can see the classification. We can't just draw 2 lines to categorize into 3 stages. These 3 stages we should identify based on these 2 important relationships, right? Using these 2 important relationships, we can identify these 3 stages, right? Right. So in that way, the production process can be divided into 3 different stages. Okay. So in the short run, so we can identify these 3 main production functions: total production, average production, and marginal production. And the behavior of these production functions, right? So we can identify graphically this way, so that we can identify the concept of the law of diminishing return, and also the relationship between the key production function. And based on that, the stages of production can be identified, right? This is a very, very important part of managerial economics, right? So do you have your recommended study text with you? Do you have the recommended study text?
Yes.
Yeah. So there also I will mention you the specific pages that you need to refer. In your study text. Now we are discussing the production theory. So if you see page number 179, right? So here, that is very clearly this production function is given, right? So you can see, so production function is given clearly, is total production, average production, marginal production, right? So it is given the relationships, right? So you have to refer from page number 179. In fact, production functions start from page number 76. This special relationship, between the production functions explained in page number 179. And so there, as I mentioned here, the law of diminishing return, right, begins from this point. So it is very clearly explained in this study text, right? So in page number 179, The law of diminishing returns is given in page number 180, because here a specific point I have mentioned, right? Very specifically the meaning I have given in this material, right? The more detail, so you can identify from this study text. And I also have sent you additional note also, but here it is there. And these 3 stages of production also given in page number 182, right? So if you refer to page number 182 and 83, the stages of production given, right? The 3 stages of production very clearly given in page number 182 and 83. Okay. So it is better to refer these at least these specific pages that I highlight, especially production, cost of production, market structures, the main pages that you better to refer. So I will highlight when we discuss these topics. So that will be important. So here, using Excel, there are some advantages also, right? Even though there are number of disadvantages when we are doing the online class, but there are advantages also, right? So here, so it's can be presented more correctly, more clearly, and more quickly. Certain points. So the stages of production. What is the meaning of the production function and law of diminishing returns? The 3 stages of production. Right, so you can refer to the page numbers that I referred, so that will be useful for additional details. Right. Right. Then maybe the long run production and the balance part we can continue from the next week. Right. So any questions relating to the points we discussed today or earlier? So if there are any questions, you can ask.
Not for me.
Right. Is it clear for everyone?
Yeah, only one thing, sir, that stage 2, that the intersection point of stage 2 and stage 3,
Yeah.
that then whatever the production company, are they selected as a maximum point, or they
actually, yeah, so the point that the company will select depends on several factors, but logically it should be a point within this stage, right? So we can't, right, that means based on their ability to spend for the factors, right? Based on their ability to spend for the factors, and based on the demand for their product, right? So even though they can produce up to this level, if the maximum demand is less than that, so they have to consider some other quantity, and based on the number, the total amount they can pay for the workers, the total number of total amount they can spend for the material, all these factors should be considered, right? Subject to these factors, they can select a point on this stage, because right. So but if the resource availability and the demand is very low, they may have to select a point in this section. But in order to maximize production, definitely this is the section logically they should select. But they, even if they have resources, they should not move to this stage, right? So therefore, the selection of the production level depends on should be based on this stage. But if their capacity, that means if their ability to spend for the factors, the demand is demand for their product is low, they may have to operate in this stage. But this is the stage that they can maximize production.
Okay, sir.
Right. Any other question? Right. I will send you this material, and last week there was a delay, and thanks to your friend Madhava, he has sent the mail with a copy to all of you, so I will email now itself, so that there will not be any delay. After the class, I will email now itself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Okay, Imali.
Hari sir, mang end karan nang.
Hari Imali.
Okay sir, thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.